We have people here already. See if I can straighten my collar up halfway decent this time. I don't have a makeup artist or technician. I don't have anybody checking my appearance before, I do these things. Oh, I do some rudimentary things. I make sure I don't have a booger hanging out of my nose. Sometimes I forget to do that too. But I don't really check myself that close. Make sure everything is in its place and that kind of thing. So anyway, you have some weird things happen, like this T-shirt's not fitting right now for some reason. Anyway, enough of the complaining. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's Thursday evening, and I figured I should probably come on and say a few things because Thursday is one of the 2 days, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I try to do a regular, um, and this one was actually caused by a text message that I received, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, and why I'm not real impressed with the request. But at any rate, we're going to cover some of that. But at first, I wanted to just remind you that there are some crazy things going on. First of all, don't forget the doctor who is. I put this up about 2 weeks ago or so. The doctor that is being prosecuted for trying to help kids to keep them away from the extant treatment. Go back there and check that video, because if you're interested in helping them in any way, there's information on there as far as contacting them, reading about what happened, and also the situation with um, donations if you want to do that for the legal situation, or if you're a lawyer and you want to, an attorney, and you want to assist in any way, those types of things. Also, I had a friend, and I'm aware of the case. There's an elderly gentleman, I think his last name is Kelly, in Arizona, who, in defending his property, ended up shooting an illegal alien. I'll use the term illegal alien. I don't know the circumstances. This is one of those things that's going to have to. I mean, it's just hard to tell what really happened. But the bottom line is that the United States government has put us in this position where we live in fear. I went down to the border in 2011. If you look at my playlists under films and documentaries, I did a documentary in 2011 called, um, now I forgot, Borders. I almost said the wrong thing. It's called Borders, Mexican Drug War or Insurgency. And I pointed out that this is an invasion on the border. It's being driven, of course, by the drug cartels. However, there are other problems involved in that. And even back then, I said the only way to secure the border, a barrier is fine, but it has to be observed at all times. And we need military on the border, because the people down there have a palpable fear, a real, honest fear of these people coming across the border illegally. I could give you a lot of stories. I'll just tell you one. I was going to interview during that time. I was going to interview a family. I'd made pre-arrangements to interview a family. This was in Brownsville, not in Nogales, over just south of Tucson, where this incident took place here recently. But in Nogales, I talked to a family. I'm sorry, in Brownsville, I had talked to a family, and they had agreed to an interview. Now, I had done some other work in the area before this interview was scheduled, and they had helped me out quite a bit before that. Well, the cartels found out. Matamoros is just across the Rio Grande, and they found out, the cartel there found out that I was doing this investigation in this documentary. And the son of this rancher that I had made these arrangements with drove. And the funny thing was, is the wall, the border wall, was back about a quarter to a half a mile from the Rio Grande. So this farmer, this rancher's property is partly blocked off to him. It's a danger to go in there, but they have to because that's their livelihood. So the son of this guy went in there, and he had his 357 Magnum with him, and he got out of his truck, left the 357 on the seat. Bad idea. With the truck running, got out, walked over to an irrigation canal control sluice, was doing that so he couldn't really hear anything, When he got done, he got back up and he went back to his truck, and his truck wasn't running, and the 357 was gone. And they started yelling at him, these drug cartel members from across the river, saying, "Look, we've got your keys," and they threw him in the Rio Grande. And then his 357, they shot off a few rounds and threw that uh, through the empties, I guess it was in the Rio Grande. I'm sure they kept the gun, but the point is, it was a warning to them that they can't talk to me. I also talked to another family, and they had people coming up to their house all the time, making threats, wanting things, and there's been other situations like that. So the government refuses to the federal government refuses to protect the border, and it's left up to the citizens to do that, and we the people are the militia. Now the question is whether this is a criminal case or not. And I suppose there's no other way to resolve it but by the courts. But unfortunately, you know how that goes. The courts are bent against true justice, and certainly against defending yourselves. Um, there was apparently one death as a result of this rancher down there, this Mr. Kelly, I believe is his name, who felt like he needed to defend himself. Um, Circumstances say that the border crosser was shot in the back as he was running away. But who knows what the real situation was? I mean, under the circumstances, anything's possible. The question is was his life in danger, this rancher's, or did he feel it was? But at any rate, guess what? He's a white guy, and he's 70 years old. So they arrested him. They set his bail, I think, at $1 million or something like that. However, he was able to get released on a bond of some sort, probably with uh, putting up some property or something like that to get out. But this is what we're dealing with. The government refuses to do its duty, yet you're responsible if you try to protect yourself and your family. This is all wrong. It's all backwards, and it's just indicative of where this country is today. On top of that, of course, we have the situation, all these different things that are happening ecologically. The government wants to force you, for instance, there was a guy in Wyoming who built a little pond, and the EPA came in there and filed criminal charges on him for building this little pond. It was on his own property, and he ended up going to court on this thing. They went after it for years and years, and then finally he was able to prevail, but it about cost him everything. The point is that when you do little things like that are really improvements, but go against some stupid regulation, they come after you, but the government refuses to do its constitutional duty to protect you. And I could give you lots of other examples of similar things. For instance, requiring you to have the OWS, just as an example, right? Or the situation with this derailment in Ohio as one example, spewing this World War I chemical toxin agent. Get that out here in a minute. All of those kinds of things, and they do nothing. As a matter of fact, what was that rail car doing transporting something that was banned long ago? What was going on there? You see what the problem is. And then, of course, as I put up on my posts, on my community posts lately, we now have evidence that the DOD was actually the one behind this entire EUA and the entire sickness that came out, all of that stuff, and that it was being run by them. And for what reason? As a countermeasure against you, to get surveillance materials inside you so that you can be defeated. I'll just put it simply like that. Then we have President Biden and our government giving billions of dollars to an unjust war that we have no real stake in, no real national interest, and in fact, we caused this. I know there's a long history of Russians and Germans and Ukrainians, but being at odds with each other. But that's why our founding fathers said, don't get involved in the disputations in Europe. It's a black hole. You get in there, you never get out. Well, our evil government, Nuland, Biden, Sullivan, all those people. I guess there are a bunch of them I could probably name. They see an opportunity to build empire and to make money and to kill people in mass, which is part of what we know the governments are about these days. So they fomented a specific situation in Ukraine, as you all know. I'm just repeating a little bit of this with the Maidan coup back in 2014, the rearming of Ukraine, making it the largest and most well trained, well equipped army in Europe, getting ready to attack Russia. And yes, it was about ready to do that, and Russia had to act to prevent that and to protect the people in the eastern Donbass regions, the eastern Ukrainian regions. Of course, you don't get any of that information anymore. It used to be pretty extant in the news media, even the mainstream media, until this all started now. And then, of course, the narrative shifted, and it's all Russia's fault. I'm not saying I like the war. This is crazy. It should never have gotten to this point. I'm not saying Putin is a savior. Glenn Beck came out and said, "Oh, you guys better stop thinking Putin's such a great guy because this could all be a deception. He's not really holding up family values the way we think he is." Well, name somebody in the United States that's upholding family values, or the idea that the government should protect its people, or that, I mean, any number of things. You're not teaching your kids to be. I don't even know how to say it without getting in trouble. Degenerates, I'll just say it. And he brought up all that in his speech. So I don't know what Glenn Beck's all about. I made a rather crass statement about his statement. Maybe I shouldn't have said it, but I did. It's because of the ties to a particular church he has that he mumbles this stuff out every once in a while. I think that's what it was in this case. But regardless, whether he really believes it or not, um, him coming down on Putin and saying that he's just deceiving us is, by their fruits you will know them. And I don't want to put Putin up as a return of Jesus Christ or anything like that. But man, as a leader of the nations right now, you find somebody that's speaking like him. All right, people say, well, that's what the Antichrist is going to do. And go look at what the real Antichrist does. Man, I get tired of these, which is why we're going to go to this here in a minute. Okay, the other thing, of course, that I mentioned just real quick is this situation with the WHO. Who's on first? What's on second? Where's on third? Who is the important? Who's who? Okay. And there's going to be, I guess, some type of action here in the next few days with Biden and making some arrangement with that organization to basically surrender our ability to run our own wellness system. Let me put it that way. Okay. And this is bad. This is bad. If the Congress allows this to go through, and it should have it's not really a treaty because it's not another country. I don't know how this is going to work. It's going to be like a UN treaty, I guess. I'm not sure of the legal ramifications of it, but regardless, it's evil. And they were using all kinds of reasons to do this because, the world needs this control, this regulation to keep everybody, quote unquote, safe. Yeah, they did real well with that on the last one, didn't they? But this is all about the devil taking, and I'm using that in general terms, the devil taking control of your life, your free will, your liberties, your life itself, and cutting off your posterity. That's what that's about. So I could continue to talk about these political things, but now let me tell you why I really have come on tonight. And this particular individual, I'm going to mention them here in just a minute. They're on this channel quite often as in the chat. I've also seen them in the comments when I check the comments. And the name is Remnant Seed. Now I put out a number for a call-in. That's what the number is for call-ins. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be abused. Now it is true that I said if you really have something important, if whatever, if it's really important, go ahead and text me on that number. And it's right in the description box of one of the I think it was the first call-in program that we did, that it's okay to do that. But I'm not there to argue with you. I'm not there to debate you. Okay? I'm not there to do a dissertation. If you have something you want to offer, that's fine, but I'm not going to sit there and argue with you on the phone. And I was explicit about not letting it be used for anything but just a short, important message. And of course, somebody who's got a hair up their ass has got to make an issue and try to get me involved in an argument. So, Remnant Seed, if you're on here right now, I hope you're paying real close attention. And this will go for anybody else that tries to do this. So, Remnant Seed sends me this text and it says, I want you to bring me on your show so we can debate the deity of Jesus Christ. I want to debate the deity of Jesus Christ. I don't debate what I show you. I'm here to offer you things that you should look at and be aware of. I don't care if you accept them. I don't care if you believe them. I don't care if you reject them. I don't care if you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, that's some really important information. I've really got to look into this. I'm not here preaching dogma, and the deity of Jesus Christ is dogma, whether you want to believe it or not. It's a doctrine and a dogma. You can believe it. My oldest son has a very strong belief in that. I don't castigate him for it. I don't want to debate him about it. We don't go there. It's a belief. I am here, as I just said, to present you materials that, yes, might, in many cases, contradict the tradition of the last 2,000 years, even written words. All I'm doing is presenting them to you. I'm not doing it as a matter of debate. If you want to have a difference of opinion, we're not going to argue it on my channel. You start up Remnant Seed, your own channel, and you present your side of what you believe in, because that's all it is a belief. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. I don't castigate people for believing things. I'd rather them believe something than not, especially something like this. But at the same time, I'm aware historically, logically, and to some extent spiritually about the things that I present that need to at least be examined. Keep your faith, whatever it is. If your faith is really anchored on truth, you'll be able to look at this and say, oh, that may be true. It may not be. Roy, things are going to hot in Moldova. Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Jesse. I should have probably mentioned that. I did actually mention on Twitter today, and I think I put up a post on my community post about it too. Yeah, we've got to watch Moldova. Transnistria, and in particular, NATO and Ukraine are talking about invading down there, or not invading, but occupying it and going after the Russians there. The Russians won't let that happen, or they'll counter it. So yeah, that is another issue. Ukrainian leadership and the United States and NATO leadership is evil. Bottom line, end of story. Okay, thanks, Jesse, for bringing that up. Yeah, it's probably going to go hot. Also, as I said, there's indications, I put this up on my community post too, there are indications that, as I said about 3 days ago, it looks like Russia's about ready to go on this offensive. It's not going to be like a blitzkrieg, pardon me, but it's going to get more intense, and a bombing campaign from high-altitude bombers has already started. So, and then, of course, this thing in Moldova, they could very easily do a naval assault up on the bottom there of Ukraine and then go up into Moldova, into Transnistria. I don't know how that's going to work out, but yeah, that's a problem. I know a lady from Moldova, as a matter of fact, and it's tragic. It's the whole thing's tragic. Okay, so bottom line, Remnant Seed. No, I'm not going to debate you, and I'm going to show you why here. Okay, 2,200 tons of Russian weapons there. Well, they may have removed those, BP, I really doubt that Russia left that kind of stuff there. That 1,500 soldier contingent that they have, that detachment there, I mean, that's probably enough to secure it in one regard, but I don't think the Russians would actually leave it there. And then the other deal is, and I heard this on a discussion today, that materiel and that ammunition is over 20 years old. Some of it's like 40 years old. And that stuff doesn't have much of a shelf life. I think the top shelf life is about 20 years. So I don't think that's really going to be a big issue. If Ukraine wants to get it and use it, if it's even still there, which I kind of doubt, but if it is there and Ukraine wants to use it, it'll be more of a danger to the people that are firing those ammo, that ammunition, than the Russians that or they anticipate will be on the receiving end. I wouldn't want to do it. You know, I was at Twell Army Depot for a while, which is the largest chemical weapons storage facility in the world. And they also had a conventional weapons storage area there. And they were constantly doing ammunition upgrades, taking ammunition out, refurbishing it, putting it back into A1 shape, and then restoring it. They don't leave it out there to rot like that. So I wouldn't want to shoot those rounds. That's what I'm telling you, that they've got stored there in Moldova and Transnistria. I wouldn't want to do it. It's more danger to the people that would be using them, the people that receive it, or that they anticipate receiving it. Okay, getting back on this situation. So, and I've had this happen to maybe one or two other people that want to get on here and debate. Debate. You don't read your scriptures very well, do you, Remnant Seed? By the way, it's kind of interesting that you call yourself Remnant Seed. How do you know? How do you know you're Remnant Seed? See, you start off from a position of pride and ego, which already describes that you don't really know much at all. Yeah, I'm insulting you. I will present you with information. If you don't like it, figure it out some other way. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Remnant Seed, as I just said a few minutes ago, if you want to present information that Jesus is in fact deity, talk about it. But we're not going to argue about it. You know why? Because debate is arguing. Debate is contention. And if you know anything about the scriptures, Remnant Seed, contention is not of Jesus. It's not of God. Truth stands on its own. It doesn't need a proof in the way of debate, because you can't prove anything that way. And we're going to go through it right here, using some mathematical concepts. You might want to look these up, Remnant Seed. The reason why I don't trust Paul, and I put it out there, I don't care if you want to believe Paul was an apostle of Jesus, that met him personally in the spirit, because he certainly didn't meet him when he was living when Jesus was alive. If you want to believe Paul is the apostle that Jesus called out of nowhere to the Gentiles, fine, you do that. Some of Paul's writings, at least that are attributed to Paul, were probably some of the earliest written evidences of the early Christian movement. But they were altered from the Messianic movement, as I've explained, which was to stand against the Khatim, the Roman invasion, and to prepare for Israel becoming, the kingdom of God again. It was changed from an earthly situation to this pie in the sky spiritual place in the clouds. Even though John refers to Jerusalem as Babylon. Paul was a Pharisee, well schooled. He was also Herodian, and he was a Roman citizen. He wasn't a peasant like most of the people that Jesus brought into his organization, most of whom probably couldn't even read or write. And if they could, and there were probably some that could, Paul would have outdone them because he was schooled in the Roman schools on rhetoric and debate. which is why he comes across and accusing people. If you believe any other gospel than the gospel I have preached, then you be accursed. Just one example of his pride and his contentiousness. Something that James called him out on constantly. The whole Jerusalem assembly was about this situation with Paul causing problems. He was contentious and he was an ass. And he was the one that came out more than anybody else about the deification of Jesus, because that was not the issue. All you got to do is read James first. The 3 Johns, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, there are some issues in there. I'm not going to get into that. We're not even sure who wrote all this stuff. You can't prove it. I don't care what you say. Remnant Seed, you can't prove that the apostle Matthew actually wrote the Gospel of Matthew. And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings here, okay? You're free to disbelieve anything I'm telling you, anything we discuss. My point is that there are some things that you have to do in order to prove something. And he wants to debate the deity of Jesus based on what? Paul uses rhetoric. He's schooled in debate. You can see it in his writings. So is Philo of Egypt, by the way, and so is Josephus, and also some other people that are very suspicious about their actions during this time period. But at any rate, like I say here, present your information on another YouTube channel, Random Seed, or anybody, Random Seed, Remnant Seed, or anybody else who feels like they need to debate me to prove that Jesus is deity, or whatever your subject matter is. I'm not going to do that. You go present your stuff. I'll even do you a favor, just like I do with Michael Heiser, just like I do with Chuck Baldwin, and some others, whom I don't agree with entirely, but they have good information. So I'll refer people to their work. And Remnant Seed, you start up your own channel and you start showing your proofs for the deity of Jesus. I'll send people there. I'll send everybody on my channel to listen to it. Hell, they might even convert if they're not already. I don't mind that, because it's an individual. Salvation is an individual thing. Truth isn't, but salvation is. So, you might want to go look up, Remnant Seed, these things about contention. I'm not going to give you the New Testament references. There are plenty. I'm sure you can find them. But I'm going to tell you to go look up Proverbs 13:10 and 18:6. Go look at those, Remnant Seed, or anybody else who wants to take time on my channel to debate and contend with me, which is something I don't do, except on 2 subjects. And you know what those are. It's actually 1 subject. There's a difference. And I'm applying mathematical principles here, which if you don't agree with, that math doesn't take precedence here, you really don't understand logic and reason and the importance of what I'm going to tell you. There's a difference between postulates or theories. Actually, postulates are even less than theories. Postulates are just, we think that the moon is made of cheese. That's a postulate. The theorem might be, the moon was made out of cheese because of this and this and this. All right? But a postulate is just a statement with no real facts involved, just an observation. As I say here, postulates do not equal proof. You can spout your belief all day long, and it might be a proof to you personally, but no one else is required to believe a damn thing you say. Problems with theological debate. Why it's a useless endeavor. And it's caused wars, torture, rejection. You want to take part in that, Remnant Seed? Is that going to be your legacy? Some problems with theological debate. Circular definition. Do you know what that is, Remnant Seed? Using the item to define itself. What are you going to use to define Jesus, just to prove Jesus' deity? You're going to use the Bible, most particularly the New Testament. Now, it's true. The Bible is made up of many, many books. And you could say that each one of those is an individual testament. I'll give you that. But here's the catch, Remnant Seed. How do you cross-examine something, especially something that socially impregnated? Not historically. Socially and religiously. How do you cross-examine that, Remnant Seed? It's a matter of belief. Debate is not what you do on something like that. So, you can't use the scriptures about Jesus' deity to prove Jesus' deity. That's circular reasoning. That's a circular definition. That's a math principle. And you can't do it because it doesn't do the proof that you were trying to make it do. We can sit here and argue about what it says. For instance, and I've said this, about the Virgin Mary. What does that word virgin mean? We can argue that because that's something that's pretty concrete. You can get down there, you can say, this is what the Hebrew says about what a virgin is. And you can say, yeah, but a virgin is really, we can argue about little things like that. We can argue about whether the genealogy in Luke is right or the genealogy in Matthew is right. Those are things of substance that we can take in the text and bounce off each other. But the deity of Jesus, even the principle of God, even the proof of God, what are you going to do with that, Remnant Seed? What proof do you have of that? Huh? What proof? Circular reasoning, circular definition. Not allowed in math. Tautological fallacy. It's kind of like using the same thing to define itself. It's kind of the same thing. It's sort of like saying, you've heard of what a vehicle identification number is, right? A VIN. A lot of times it just says VIN. Well, a tautology is when you say VIN number. Well, you're saying that twice. You're saying VIN number, because it's a vehicle identification number, VIN number. So you're going to use that? That's a tautological fallacy. And it happens with religious people trying to prove something that they can't all the time. Proof of impossibility cannot be solved as claimed. That's right, you can't. A good example of a proof of impossibility is saying that the square root of 2 is a ratio of 2 integers. It isn't, and you can never get it to be. These are the types of arguments that people use to try to force their religious concepts, I'll even say spiritual concepts, onto others under threat of force, violence, or getting thrown out of heaven and thrown into hell. You got to believe on Jesus or you're going to go to hell. Those are violent threats. That isn't the promise of a spiritual leader. Somebody else needs to examine that, and that's where I'm going next. Using the Bible, even though it's a collection of books, either one of those books, the same thing holds true, to prove the Bible exhibits these above flaws. Again, well, Matthew said that Jesus did this, and Luke said that Jesus did that. Aren't those two witnesses in two separate books? Here's the next key. You need 2 or more witnesses that you can cross-examine. In the scientific method, it's the repetition of an experiment. That you do an experiment and you say this is what happened, and then other people can repeat that experiment and it happens the same way. That's called the scientific method. It's skepticism, and you have to prove it. Religion isn't based on skepticism. It's based on you have to believe this or you're going to hell. That's an exaggeration, but that's kind of where most religious thought is, no matter what. So the last thing that you have to be able to do is cross-examine the witnesses. How are you going to do that, Remnant Seed? They're all dead. Okay, well, there's that thing in legalese where it says, a deathbed confession is good in court. Did these people write these things down on their deathbed? And how are you going to prove that? My point in what I bring up is that there are inconsistencies between all of these writings that are significant, and they need to be examined and understood for what they are. If you don't want to do that, that's fine with me. But I give you the information so you can do it if you want to. I don't sit up here. My salvation, my self-worth, self-esteem isn't dependent upon whether you accept what I say or not. I could be wrong. I'm an historian. I'm telling you that there are things you need to examine and consider, not to take things blindly. Look those things up if you don't know what they are, Remnant Seed. And no, I'm not going to debate you. That's contention. And I'm being a little contentious here today. But that's because I'm sick and tired of people doing this kind of thing. I've done my dissertation. You can go to my religion series. You can go to my Eisenman series. You can go to all the other videos that I've made explaining how I view this and upon what basis I do it. I'm not hiding anything. I've put my information out there. You put yours out there, Remnant Seed, and then we'll go from there. We'll let the people decide when they read this stuff. A lot of people want to hear, Jesus is deity. That'll make them feel good, and if they want to accept that, that's fine. Like I said, my oldest son is convinced of that, and he's probably right. But it's not the Jesus that I think did that, and this has been my point, is not the one that's extant in the New Testament. That's been my point. If you've read any of my things, and I base it on what I can do as far as historical method is concerned, which is as close as you can get to scientific method when you are in a subject like history. And frankly, there's a lot, as far as testimonies are concerned, as far as, witnesses and all that, it's real sparse, Remnant Seed, real sparse. James doesn't even talk about the resurrection. You've heard me say it. Go find it in the Epistle of James, Remnant Seed. Go find evidence of the resurrection in James. As an important event as that is, he doesn't talk about it. Why? That's the question you need to ask. I'm not saying he wasn't resurrected. I'm saying, why didn't James say it? Okay. Cross-examination. By the way, Remnant Seed, one thing you can do for me if you would, all right, I want you to send me the square root of 2 using a ratio of 2 integers. Send that to me. And that's how well you'll do in a debate of Jesus' deity. Okay? Got a couple of other things I want to bring up. And I'm not going to take a whole lot of comments tonight. I'm not going to get on the chat. No, I don't want to get into this thing here. I've kind of covered this subject before. I see a thing. I'll just mention it real quick. I'm not going to get into this either. I'm really tired of everybody saying that, my big thing that I will not move on, it, is the man-woman relationship and the fact that there's no such thing as the virgin birth of Jesus Christ, okay? I think everybody with me know, and when I say that, I mean by a woman who didn't have sex with a man, okay? I don't believe that. It's not in the Hebrew, and it's a Greek Hellenized thing that was introduced into the storyline, probably by Philo or somebody like that. Roy, do you think the 2 golden rules cover all beliefs? Absolutely. because they're in your consciousness. Everyone knows that they don't want that they don't want to be, if they want to be treated like they want to be treated well. So why would you treat somebody else not well? Then you're contradicting yourself, number one. Number two, you may not know what God is. You may not have an experience with him, right, BP? Right, Jesse? But you have an innate something inside you that says there's something bigger than you, and you have awe for that. You have respect for that. And I think that no matter who you are, where you live, what your social condition is, or anything, those two things are inside you. I get accused of blasphemy a lot. Most people don't even know what blasphemy is. If you ever looked it up, I'm not talking to you now, Jesse. I'm just talking to people in general. Blasphemy just means disrespect. Well, who's considering it disrespect? A lot of Christians disrespect Allah, but Muslims think you're committing blasphemy. Well, blasphemy is just disrespect. You're not required to respect somebody else's notion. You're not required to respect somebody else's belief. The only time you have to respect something is when you have experienced it yourself and proven it to yourself, however you're going to do that. If the Bible does it for you, that's fine. That's fine. But don't expect somebody else to go along with your dogmatic approach to the situation. And don't be calling them pejorative names like heretic, which does nothing more than say that they disagree with you. That doesn't cut it. And a lot of people have been murdered by ecclesiastical organizations because they didn't agree with the status quo. And it's wrong. And a lot of those people, you find out later, were right. What about the extant problem of the sickness over the last 3 years? Many of us, right from the start, said thus and so, thus and so, thus and so. This is not good, this is not good. And we were put down and called basically heretics for it. We lost our jobs. We lost friends. A lot of us, ostracized, rejected. Because medicine became a religion. You want to go back to that remnant seed? You want to go back to the drawing and quartering? To the cutting out of the entrails? To the torture racks? Oh, we're just going to punish your body to save your soul. What a lie. What a lie. It's nothing more than demonic violence. Jesus didn't do it. I thought you're supposed to do what Jesus did, remnant seed. Jesus didn't argue with anybody. Have you ever noticed that? When somebody came up and said something to him that he knew was even wrong, he would just say something and let it go. He might back it up with some more things, but he didn't stay there and debate them. Show me a case where he sits there and debates them. You know who debated? I already told you. The Pharisee-trained Herodian Roman infiltrator Paul. That's who was debating and contentious. And said that if you don't believe what he says, you're going to hell, basically. All right. I suspect, even though I haven't been watching the chat here, I was going to get into, and I started to say it, I was going to touch on this whole thing of lust again. Let me finish that. That's where I was going right there. The Christian concept of lust has been so perverted that it's actually worse than the lust itself that it complains is being manifested today. I don't know if I should mention the website or not, or the YouTube site or not, but there's a particular YouTube site that's this subject matter of calling people out for the lust that especially the lust for a man would have for a woman or vice versa. That's the most terrible thing in the universe. That's the ultimate sin, and you have to purge your heart and your flesh and your eyes of it. They think that's the root of it all because they go back to saying that it was sex in the Garden of Eden, particularly between Adam and Eve, that they fell. You know, I don't accept that, and I never will. So I did another little thing on lust. I'm not going to get into it tonight other than to say this. I'll give you a couple of words you can go look up. Okay? You may remember that when my wife died, I heard a voice that said, with a stroke, I take away the desire of your eyes. I'd heard that somewhere before when that happened, and I couldn't remember where I heard it before. And I didn't look it up right away. I was in too much shock and misery. But I finally did look it up. And it's in Ezekiel 24:16. And I mentioned it before. When God tells Ezekiel that his wife's going to die and not to mourn her death because it's a symbol of how God feels. He wants Ezekiel and the people to see how God feels about this. Of Israel dying, leaving him. The word that is used there is 4261 in the Hebrew side of Strong's. And it's machmod. Machmod. And it's from word 2530, kalmed. Kalmed. God didn't say that was evil. He recognized that Ezekiel loved his wife, that she was the desire of his eyes. And you only say, well, that's the thing. It's his wife. Well, I'm not going to get into the rest of the subject matter tonight, but I'm telling you that there's nothing wrong with that relationship, even that what you would call lust, but I'll say is desire for your spouse. And it's righteous and it's good and it's wholesome. But there are people out there like this other site I'm talking, I'm not going to name it, that'll say, no, that's not the case. There are other words for lust too. And I did a whole video on that probably about a year ago. Go back and look it up. All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that either. Maybe I will say this much. By the way, as I've explained, there are scriptures that explain the relationship between men and women, especially unmarried ones. And that if a man humbles a maid who is not betrothed, that's the key. A maid is an unmarried woman, not betrothed either. Betrothal is considered a marriage. And he lays with her. It's not evil, it's not sinful. He just has a requirement now. He has to marry her. And there's even another little caveat in there about that, which I'm not going to cover tonight because the Christians will be throwing rocks and pulling their hair out. But only under certain circumstances does he have to ask her, say, hey, you got to be my wife now. And of course, she can always reject it. But you don't understand that because you've had 2,000 years of this prudish stuff that's nowhere to be found. When Jesus talked about adultery, he was talking about it in Old Testament law terms. A man can't commit adultery in a woman with an unmarried woman, period. There are some requirements that he has to take care of. If he does it, it's not wise, as I've said. I'm not talking about promiscuity. But a married woman having sex with somebody else, she's committing adultery, and the man that she's having sex with is committing adultery because he's violating another man's contract. Oh, you're the redneck ma, Jesse? All right, thanks. Now, can a man commit adultery? Let's say he's married to a woman and he goes out and, he's with other women. Well, there's some parameters in the Old Testament, which Jesus would have referred to in the law. He didn't change any of this, despite what the Christians say. You can believe that or not, but I think you need to look into it. If the man was under a vow to not be with another woman, in other words, like today, you hear him say, you're going to forsake everybody else, right? You two are going to get married, and you're going to forsake everyone of the opposite sex. And if the guy agrees to that, and then without going to his wife and getting her permission to alter the contract, he commits adultery. But only in that case. Just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, I've never taken a vow to a woman that I'm only going to be with her. Just so you know. So I can't commit adultery unless I get with another man's wife. Because sex isn't adultery. And I've got all this here. I went through a lot of it before. I'm not going to do it again tonight because we're getting along here. But I just want to show you. I'm not going to debate any of this. I'm just telling you, you need to search it out for yourself. I'm pointing things out to you so that you can go look and prove it to yourself or disprove it. Doesn't matter to me, but I'm not going to give in on the importance of the man-woman relationship. As a matter of fact, I got on a guy today, and it was a preacher wearing a rainbow. It was on Twitter. A preacher wearing a rainbow. I forget what they call those things. It's the little deal that the preachers wear when they're out preaching. I think he was Anglican, but I'm not really sure. And he's talking about that, this whole thing that I talk about, that there are males and females, and then he's trying to debunk that and saying no, it's all same sex. Anyway, and I just said, this guy here, he's promoting the very thing which is destroying the understanding of Christians and many other religions these days in the man-woman relationship. And it started with that squamate Ophidian in Eden. And it's been going on ever since. And God said, man, you don't need to be ashamed. Christians have really screwed up the world with this thing. And it's not just the Christians, but because of their stand on this whole situation, they've really corrupted the whole man-woman relationship. They really have. Some do it very well. If you meet somebody and you click and everything works out right, although the scripture says that if a man finds that the woman he's with is he's not pleased with her, then that's I know. Jesus said no, only for the cause of fornication. Well, that's a type of fornication. You got to go read it and see it. But anyway, the other thing I have seen, I'm not going to talk any more about that tonight. I'm just going to say that these guys that constantly get on there and accuse everybody in the world of lust, and there's lust of like gluttony, there's lust of money, filthy lucre. As a matter of fact, some of the words for lust are actually talking about filthy lucre, money, unrighteous gain. Yeah, I'll go along with that, but they always want to put it in a sexual context. That's the root of all evil. That's Christian misunderstanding and a doctrine of corruption for 2,000 years, maybe 6, 5, whatever. Okay. One last thing I'm going to bring up. I've been on here too long already. I've noticed it several times, and I wonder what the heck is this person up to? I don't remember who it is, but they come on the chat and they come in my comments and they say, define what the Hebrew word for rib means. This person has some type of a fixation on the Hebrew word for rib. What does it really mean? And I've seen it many, many times, and I'm wondering what in the world is going on here. And I've just kind of ignored it, Is there some esoteric thing that they're getting at or whatever, trying to catch me in something that maybe I don't know, which there are a lot of things I don't know. But I'm going to answer it tonight. If you're here, I'm going to tell you some things about the rib. Okay? The word that's in Genesis 2 verses 21 and 22, where it talks about God taking the rib from Adam and making a woman. It's word 6763 in Strong's. And it's Selah. Selah. It's Zadeh Lamed Ayin. If you break that down by Notaricon, it's a righteous thing. Okay? It's the righteous judgment of the eye. Because he said, what? This is, Adam said after the woman was brought to him, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, therefore shall she be called woman. That's Zadeh Lamed Ayin, a righteous decree because he sees her. Chaos. All of a sudden, the woman comes out of chaos, and here she is in front of him, and he falls in love with her. And he makes that declaration. Is that lust, guys? They were in the flesh at that time. Duh. It means ribbed. It means curved. It means a side. It means a side chamber of the temple. However, if you just look up those words, those letters in the Hebrew, it can change quite a bit. There are a couple different words that it falls under, and I don't know if this is what this person's getting at or not. It can also mean limp, like it causes a limp, lame, inclined to one side because you're lame or whatever. And here's the one I was wondering if they were wondering about and why they kept pushing it. A fall. Are you saying that the creation of the woman by Adam's rib was the cause of the fall? Are you saying that, the person that keeps asking this? Because that's not the kind of fall it's talking about. It's defined there. You have an injury and you fall over. Kind of like your leg, which is what the curve would be. You know, people that get scurvy, you know, their bones curve and they can't walk straight, they get lame. You got to look at the context. Now, that might not be what you're trying to push, that the taking of the rib was, and the bringing of the woman was the fall, because that's not what it is. Interestingly, in the Aramaic, in Daniel 7:5, it's word 5967 in the Aramaic, and it's a cognate of the Zadeh Lamed Ayin. In Aramaic, it's Ayin Lamed Ayin, which corresponds to word 6763 and is considered a rib. But look at that. And the Aramaic's not quite like the Hebrew, but it's staying interesting here. It means the eye judges the eye. Or side by side. The rib, the side. You have an ayin, the lamed, and the ayin. So they're side by side. The concept, like I said before, a side or a B-side. So it still follows that, but that's the Chaldean or the Aramaic. Now, there's one other thing I'm going to bring up, and that's the way this is translated in some translations. The King James being one, and that is 2 Samuel 2:23, 2 Samuel 3:27. You can write these down if you want. Again, 2 Samuel 2:23, 2 Samuel 3:27, 2 Samuel 4:6, and 2 Samuel 20:10. There's a word there that's translated in many New Testament or Old Testament translations as being that this was the fifth rib, that when this injury happened in the fifth rib. And I looked at that and I thought, well, it kind of goes along with liver, because the liver's kind of high up. So I thought that might be what it was, this fifth rib idea. But when I looked it up, did a little more research, it means the belly. So that word that's used, which is komesh, that's translated as the fifth rib, that's not what it is at all. I don't know who decided to put that in there like that. It means the belly, the abdomen. It actually means fat or obese, the fifth part, or even the number 5. Just another example of some weird ways that some of the translators have moved things around, and yet we're supposed to believe that this is, the ineffable, infallible word. That's the end of it tonight. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to debate. I present what I have to present. If you don't like it, that's fine. I'm just telling you so that you can go and look at these things for yourself and make your own conclusions. So I think you get the message, Remnant Seed, or anybody else. I'm not going to sit and debate you. That's contention. I'm not going to do it. People that come here, I'm not forcing them here. And I'm not going to go to a debate and try to force anything, try to win. Paul, that was one of Paul's problems. He doesn't beat the air. He runs to win. Have you ever read those in his epistles? I don't beat the air. I run to win. I'm all things to all men. Whatever needs to win over them, that's what I am to them. You're going to trust somebody like that who even states it in his own epistles? Not me. Not me. Again, you can if you want, but I'm not. Things are getting bad, ladies and gentlemen. Are we going to go to nuclear war? Well, not tomorrow. Hopefully never. Hopefully there is an intervention by God to prevent this, because this is his creation. I can't see him allowing this. But he's allowed millions and billions, well, millions at least, people to be annihilated in the past and didn't do anything to stop it. Oh, we're going to have the rapture. I don't believe in the rapture, okay? I don't see that. If you see it, great. I'm glad you do. I don't see it. I see that we have to go through the test, the refiner's fire. We have to stand up. We have to be counted. You're not going to do that by being whisked off out of the fight. You get into a boxing ring, you don't win by getting pulled out of the ring. That's not how you win. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. As I always say, that doesn't mean you can't defend yourself, but don't go looking for trouble, because you'll find it. I'd love to get into the chat, but I really can't. If I have my computer here and just looking at the phone, I hate it when I come up here and I look like just distorts everything. And I'm still growing my beard. I know you can see that. And it's a little sparse still. It's going to take another week or so before it actually fills in to the point where I'll feel comfortable with it. But I'm going to keep it, I think, at least for a little while. It's not itching so bad now. Somebody said on here, or maybe it was on the comments, or maybe it was on Twitter, I don't remember. I think it was on here, said, just use some conditioner, shampoo conditioner, or conditioner on it, and that'll soften it up. That helped a little bit. It did. But I'm not going to let it grow down the neck. The furthest it's going to come down is just below my chin, not just below my jaw. I'm not going to let it go any further than that. No. I've done that before. I had really a full beard back in the 80s, and then a few years back I had this part and then some long sideburns, but I didn't have the filled in here. But I'm going to try to do the whole fill in this time. Try to look a little more interesting, I guess. All right, like I said, I hope you all have a great evening. Get ready. They're coming after us. There's no question they are. It's incrementalism, but their time is growing. That's one of the things that's interesting about the scriptures. The time grows short for the evil ones. It does. Eventually, critical mass will be reached by the people at large who have honesty and integrity in their hearts. And when they rise up, these bad guys are going to be in trouble. And they're doing everything they can to discourage everyone from standing against them, throwing the FBI at them, not letting you talk, not letting you have free speech, trying to take your weapons from you so you can't defend yourselves as you were intended to from the tyrants, all that stuff. You see what they're trying to do. They're putting things into you, your food, your water, other things, so they can monitor you, surveil you, take away your free will, read your mind, um, turn you off, just shut you down if they want. Their countermeasures are against you, not against the disease. You are the disease, according to them. I think that was in The Matrix, wasn't it? Agent Smith said, "You are the disease and we're the cure." That's how these idiots think. Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, teach your children the art of the bow. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Y'all take care. I'm out.